on projects like, you know, Make It Funny, 5th grade, 120 Guild. Like,
well, that was at the beginning of my career, the 5th grade one. But I've also taken, you know,
repeat the question.
Well, why did I take on other projects, like the 5th grade project, while I can do these alphabet books? The short answer is because they don't pay me enough. I mean, I am prolific out of necessity. I have a lot of books out there. That doesn't mean I'm paid a living wage per book. So a lot of my books are shoot for the moon type projects, my travel memoirs. I would love to do just travel memoirs. But, you know, I was just talking during dinner how if I averaged out what I got paid for them compared to the year I spent writing them, I think I made about 15 cents an hour, you know. So I do a lot of different things. Now, it's been positive and negative in my career. You know, the negative is that I haven't branded myself as any one thing. I've pursued different avenues that are somewhat successful. Children's books, sports, travel, civil rights, immigrant type books that mean a lot to me. But I haven't been able to brand myself. The positive, though, is that I entered this writing life hoping to write what I wanted to write about. And that confidence is a huge factor, but desire and passion for what you're writing about is the other big factor. And there have been many times where I've written things that I'm not that a few times where I'm not that excited about it. A magazine assignment that I just took for the money or whatever, and I can tell that my writing's not as good. So I think it's good. I don't know if it's for karma or for just my own mental health purposes, for me to be often writing about something that I want to write about, or to even just flex my creative muscles. That 5th grade idea was just an opportunity to get creative. I think that's beneficial to me as a writer. So, is that a good answer? Yeah? Do I write to the magazine? I've been facing magazine writing out of my career a bit, but often I would pitch directly to a magazine. I'm not the best networker, but I developed some relationships with some editors over the years, and I would pitch them stories. You know, Cornell Alumni Magazine, anything that has to do with Cornell. I've been a contributing editor on their masthead for 20 years because I have so much ideas. You know, this is another good example of coming up with a good idea. When in the year 2012, it was the 100th anniversary of the Titanic sinking. I wondered, were there any Cornell graduates on the Titanic? And I found 2 who survived and 2 who didn't. And I wrote an article about that, and that was a no-brainer for them, right? So that was geared, that's often geared toward the magazine. Other times I have an idea, and I'll pitch it to one, and if that didn't work, I pitch it to another one, and it could fit the magazines. But if you're not gearing it toward the magazine, you're not going to be very successful in pitching an idea. So often that's always the number one thing is what is the magazine looking for, and will my idea fit that?
It sounds like you've done self-publishing as well as regular traditional publishing.
Right.
And so how is it for you to make the transition between those 2 types, and how it worked for you versus, I mean, it seems like a big jump.
The traditional versus self-publishing. If I'm being honest, I think the biggest reason I started self-publishing was my frustration with the traditional publishing gauntlet. You don't want me to start complaining right now. We don't have enough time, but it's been a challenge. It's a constant challenge for me. 30 books gets your toe in the door, but it's what have you done for me lately? How did your last book sell? Right now, I'm trying to get a literary agent. I've had 3 different literary agents. My last one, it was mostly her idea for us to part ways. And, you know, they look at your most recent manuscript. I have a manuscript that I was shopping around that I love. It's a fiction book. It's sort of like The Phantom Tollbooth, if anyone loves that book, but better. But I couldn't get an agent to bite on it. So I still have the challenges that every writer has. But self-publishing, if I have an idea like that, this Francis and Eddie book, I knew that it was the 100th anniversary of this event, and I didn't have time to go through the traditional publishing gauntlet. So I decided to find my favorite illustrator, pal of mine named Zach, and we made it together. And this one has actually been pretty successful. But other ones, we've lost a little money. It's just a matter of luck and timing. But I think the advantage of self-publishing is that you have total control. You're not making 60 cents a book. You're making $10 a book or whatever it might be. You're selling fewer books that way, though. So there's a give and take. But I think it's mostly been a creative outlet for me, rather than, at least at this point, a successful financial outlet for me. I don't know if that answers your question, but there used to be, I don't think I'm wrong about this, there used to be a sort of a stigma attached to self-publishing that somehow you couldn't get traditionally published, so you self-publish it. I think that's long gone. There is so much democracy out there of the ability to be published, to self-publish. And the bottom line is, nobody really looks at the name of the publisher on the title page. It doesn't matter to them. They don't know whether it's self-published. They don't care. You wrote a book. They're impressed. So I think that's going to be more and more so. The challenge is that it's so easy to self-publish now that there's a lot of white noise out there. So how do you rise above that? But I think it's I think it's a great creative outlet, if nothing else. So, yeah.
If you compare how long it took you to write and publish your first book versus more recent books, is there a drastic difference?
How long it took me to actually write my first book? It's hard. I can't compare because they're all so different. My very first real book, well, actually my very first book was, I wrote a poem when I was 17, and it won a contest. And I was in college, but they read it out loud at the award ceremony, and there was a man sitting in the audience who published miniature books. And he asked if he could turn my poem into a miniature book, like it's the size of a postage stamp. I still have it. I think 2 people ever read it, me and my mom. But that was my first one. But my first sort of real book was for Sports Illustrated for Kids magazine, which I had an internship at college there. And they let me do, I think, a book of sports puzzles. So that's a completely different kind of book. It's hard to say how long that took me. I don't think I'm any faster now or any necessarily even more skilled now than I used to be. I look at some of my old writing and I'm thinking, wow, that was pretty good. I used to be good. So I don't know I don't know in what ways I've grown as a writer. I'm sure I have, but every book is a completely different animal, you know. Anybody else have any questions? Okay.
Right here.
Oh, yes.
What's something that you get to write about but would really like to tackle?
That's a great question. See, by the way, asking good questions is a sign, like that is when I started out as a sports writer at the newspaper, and I learned how to interview people well. That is a skill that is incredibly valuable as for a writer, especially if you're writing about nonfiction or newspaper or magazine articles. Asking the correct questions. If I interview anyone famous, I always come super prepared, and I always try to ask questions that I know they've never heard before because they've heard the same question 1,000 times. And the secret nobody ever tells you the more famous someone is, the less interesting they usually are, unless you ask a really good question. So that's a really good question. So what would I like to what would I like to tackle that I haven't yet? One example is this book that I'm trying to get out there. It's called The Puddle Up. It's like The Phantom Toad. It's a lot of wordplay. It's about a kid who's a young boy who's very depressed, and he looks at his reflection in a puddle and he doesn't like what he sees. And his father recently passed away, and he stomps on the puddle and he gets transported to another world. And it's sort of about him trying to find a puddle back up. And I think it's one of the best things I've ever written, but I have to convince other people. And I'm probably going to end up self-publishing that book because it means so much to me creatively that I'll just do it myself. And if I don't make a lot of money on it or something, that's fine. At least I'll have that book out there as part of my stable of books. It means a lot to me. But I have ideas. I could have gone on for 3 hours about ideas. I have filing cabinets filled with files, filled with ideas. And I wish I could write 1,000 books at a time, but I can't, unfortunately. Yes, Sherry.
When is the cutoff for when you go, okay, this isn't going to go traditionally, I'm going to self-publish? Is it different for every book? Or?
That's a good question. I mean, it's just my own personal experience that I can answer that with, but lately lately my negativity and cynicism about traditional publishing is so grand that it's pretty quick. It's a pretty quick process. But I think one thing I'm not good at is persevering through rejection. I think I could be better, my wife will tell you that for sure, that I could be better at, okay, 8 people said no, why don't I try another 28 people? I'm not so good at that part of it. So I think often I may be too quick to abandon, but I don't know. That's for a therapist to figure out. Yes?
What writers inspire you now, and what are you reading?
That's a good question too. I'm not kidding that one not so minor reason that we moved here was John Steinbeck. I love John Steinbeck. I don't really like Ernest Hemingway, for example. I like the sort of more flowery John Steinbeck type writing. Cannery Row, I think, is one of my all-time favorite books. So that's a big answer to that. When kids ask me that at schools, I tell them Dr. Seuss. I think he was a genius. But different things inspire me. What am I reading? I just finished reading a book, the second book by the guy who wrote The Martian. It's a book called Artemis about this colony on the moon. I just finished reading that. I just finished reading Stephen King's book called 11/22/63 about trying to change the Kennedy assassination and time travel. There's a great book that I highly recommend called Station 11. It's a post-apocalyptic story, but it's just beautifully written. It's sort of like, I like post-apocalyptic stuff. The Road is a great book, but that's a very micro thing. World War Z is another great book, but that's a very macro thing. This is sort of a combination of the two. I think it's great. So I do often, there was a time, I don't really do it anymore, but there was a time where I would read, and I would have a file on my computer that I would copy down my favorite passages from those writers. In part because I was writing, let's say, a travel book, and there was a quote by Jack Kerouac or something, and I want to use it in my book. But it was also just to inspire me to do that, to write better. So that's a good process. Yeah.
Do you have a favorite quote from literature to live by?
Favorite quote from literature to live by? There's a great J.R.R. Tolkien quote, not all who wander are lost. Not all who wander are lost. I think that's it. I think somehow that has a lot to do with writing. Okay, thank you all for listening.